few topics that I've been pretty keen to just explore with you today.
Fire away.
Obviously, my show is focused on, tips for buyers and sellers, and I'm really interested about how that translates, across the globe, and whether or not we're doing the same things, or whether there's something that some sort of insight that or one of those light bulb moments that we might get.
That we could trade.
Yeah, that we could trade info, because there might be something that I can add to the
real
mix
estate
as well.
is a culture, and there should be some takeaway from American way of doing real estate and vice versa, the Australian way of doing real estate, I would assume.
Yeah, I would think so too. And it's always organic real estate, isn't it? I mean, how long have you been doing it now?
7 years now.
7 years.
7 years in the beautiful game.
Yeah, great. And I'm pushing into 17. So,
epic.
But I find every day is different.
You're too young to be 17 years in this business,
Yeah,
man.
no, thank you. Hasn't worn me down yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I guess, I was going to leave this question to later in the show, but, my wife loves Who magazine. I think we're all so focused on celebrity.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'd like to ask that question just to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to say, have you dealt with any big celebrities and any sort of high profile people?
Absolutely. Now, of course, part of being a luxury agent is you can't disclose. You keep that as close to the chest as possible. But I'll tell you my 2 stories dealing with celebrity,
Cool.
and how it operates. Because I've been, I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, so I've been around celebrities since my childhood. My parents kind of worked in certain industries that brought a little bit more of that access. But you get to realize these are normal people who want to be treated as normal people. Now, in one instance, I can't even tell you too much about the property because everyone will know it's an
iconic property.
It's an iconic property, right? And there's some cool amenities that would give it away, but it's this fun, very private retreat place. No neighbors, nothing like that.
So like a gated community, or
no? This is like upcountry. This is almost like hillbilly meets luxury Maui. So
okay.
You get a sense that he's a huge Hollywood actor. Everybody would know him. But the fact that he was drawn to this peaceful ocean view upcountry land spoke to me that like everybody does want kind of the simple life. It was simple, that wasn't over extravagant. It's why people are attracted to Maui, is to kind of become one with nature, a getaway approach, kind of unplug. It wasn't obscenely expensive. It wasn't, and it was less than $2 million, right? Which I know that's expensive, but
I thought
it's
you'd
not
say
like
20, 30 million.
Right?
Yeah,
It was, and he's been living in Maui for a long time, and recently just purchased this. I was representing the seller, who's a very fun-loving character as well, and they were friends, oddly enough. So the transaction was great. It was very fluid, but you notice with celebrities, it's a huge team behind it. So you're not necessarily seeing that person. They're not coming to do their own inspection, obviously. They're not kicking tires. They hire a team of lawyers, attorneys, representatives to help chauffeur the whole entire process. But that was one upcountry where you get a sense of like, man, I really like what this guy represents, and wasn't flash, it wasn't ego. And then the second one, I had a really fun time. I was representing the buyer, and the seller was a part of this big rock band. He's probably one of the biggest rock bands you've ever heard of, and he was the bassist. Couldn't be nicer. I mean, the guy was phenomenal, great to work with. And with my clients, there's this really wonderful family. The grandfather, they're moving out to Maui because he had cancer. And when we got there was this 1968 Shelby Ford GT, old muscle car that's probably worth $120,000 American dollars. And he was fascinated by it, the grandpa. And the seller, the celebrity guy's like, let's go, man. Pop in the car. And this is all like escrow stuff
brilliant.
for people.
Yeah.
Usually it's the seller fighting the buyer, and it's a nightmare.
It's that tense time.
It's a tense time. No, they were becoming friends. He took them on the highway, opened it up 100 miles per hour. And I like seeing that in any client, especially a celebrity, to know that, hey, down to earth, respectful, understand that there's a certain aloha spirit that comes to Maui, and presenting that to whoever's coming into their home, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about what we do is people.
Yeah.
And you do strike some amazingly, loving, caring, and gregarious people.
Yeah.
And I think when you do have that, you get to the end of the transaction, and if you can find that harmony and that balance where people are are satisfied on both sides. I mean, obviously there has to be a negotiation, and we all know that we're working for the seller to get the best possible price. But, you know, if you can walk away and people feel good about that transaction,
should be a double-sided win-win, all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's obviously a credit to you. I'd love to know a little bit about the selling process. So, you know, how do you get a property to market? What do you do to prepare it? You know, just a little bit of insight about, you know, your process. Like, you know, how does it start from, you know, just I guess if we've got a fictional seller rings you, Robert, hey, looking to sell my 4-bedroom property in Maui. It has a nice view of the ocean. Can you come around and have a look? You know, what happens next?
Well, it's a very in-depth process, probably more than what people are used to, maybe coming from a metropolitan a place or a city type of environment. In the sense that you got to be the prettiest girl at the dance. And you got to be staged right. These properties can sit on market for anywhere between, on average, say 60 days to 2 years. And at the higher end price point, being that we're second homes and people are traveling to Maui about once a year, you know, 2 years is kind of 2 weeks in that buyer's life of coming and getting to know the market. And so you can't leave a lot of room for error. And so prior to just rushing a property on market, hey, I got to sell, it's going through the checklist of staging, of inspections, of taking away any objection possible and maximizing all of our strengths and minimizing all of our weaknesses. Instead of just hastily saying, all right, let's get it on at an overprice with a leak in the ceiling and scare somebody away. And looks like this potentially could be a mold issue, but if you would have just remedied it in the first place, you wouldn't have lost that buyer, because if you lose that one person, you might have to wait a whole another year and then price reduce and then price reduce. So as much as due diligence on the front end you can do for your seller, and it's annoying and it's not fun and it's not sexy and it takes a lot of work. It's a partnership, so I'll gladly do most of the sweat equity with that seller, but they have to be involved too. They either got to write the check to have the team come in or help themselves kind of stage if they want to add some sweat equity into it.
Yeah, so I think that there's a big synergy there between what you do and what we do in Melbourne. I'm a firm believer, and I always say it to any seller, the minute I meet them, is you only get one chance to make the best impression. So we have to do it right. You know, you don't want to have to be rewinding the clock to make all those tweaks when you might have missed your best buyer that was there right at the start. And often, I don't know if you find that, but often, you know,
the first one's the best one.
It's the first one is the best one. And so, you know, you really want them to walk in and see something that is spectacular. And I think there's a big difference between showcasing and living.
Huge difference, so that's a great point.
Huge difference. And often we don't see it, do we? I mean, we've got that favourite apricot couch. Well, actually, I don't, but...
we've all seen it and dealt with it, yes.
We've got our favourite white couches. You know, but, you know, fashions change and trends change. And, you know, I don't know about you, but in our market, for example, feature walls are out. Everything has to be vivid white. Everything has to be a really blank canvas. Boring sort of sells, but the
neutral,
neutral, and the color comes in. You know, the artwork or
little pops, accent, miscellaneous pieces.
Absolutely,
No, it's 100% true. I kind of relate it towards. You guys have IPOs?
What's an IPO?
It's an initial public offering. Say, like if Apple or Facebook used to be a private organization, and then they go to the stock market.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
and
of course.
All the books have to be just right. And if you overshoot that, say you go $50 a share and the market's saying you should be at 40, well, now you're going to end up at $30 a share because you overshot the market. So first impression is part of A, is pricing, B, it's going to be condition, and then C, where our job plays a big role, is the marketing. So those three things got to work in the concert. So a buyer walks in, it's an emotional process. And they're going to look in the room and they're going to scan left to right, not so much up and down, and then they're going to go, what's this energy? Is it my wish list? Is it this? Is it that? It's not as analytical as you might think as a seller. And again, it's not personal to your lifestyle. I don't want to offend your apricot couch, but you know, lifestyle and staging, like you said, are just two separate things.
I think that's important, and it's often hard for a seller to detach. So, in our market space, we recommend decluttering specialists or styling specialists.
Yep.
And basically, I align them and set them up to come around and have a chat to the seller, because often it's better that the seller hears it from somebody independent.
Correct.
Because my relationship with the seller is to give them honest feedback. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they want a warm cuddle, don't they? They're selling their biggest asset.
Exactly.
So, we need to help them through that process.
Yes.
And also not offend them.
Correct.
But it's important that, I always talk about tough love.
Yeah.
This is to get you a better price. Yeah. It's to get a better outcome.
It's the exact same advice I'd give to my father, mother, brother, or sister. It might be the hard truth, and it's not my favorite part of the job, the tough love part. But if I don't do that, it's going to cost you a lot of money at the end of the day. And that's where some agents slip through the cracks, and they're either too nice or too new or too jaded from the industry. And instead of doing, this is exactly the advice that I would have to give to myself, any of my loved ones. It's not what you want to hear, but I'm going to save your butt at the end of the day. So, it's very important to be as frank as possible sometimes, but also as empathetic as possible, because it's natural to see more value in your house than the market will bear. That's a natural.
It is a natural thing. I mean, we all get tied up in that emotion.
Yeah, I do it.
Yeah. And I think, that's where real estate is taken an interesting turn as well, because one of the things that we're finding is that really, when somebody engages me, if a seller's looking at engaging our services, ultimately what they're getting is somebody, they need somebody who's informed in the marketplace, who can be their ambassador of price.
Correct.
And defend their pricing position. Awesome. Because the buyer has so much more information at their fingertips than they've ever had before.
Yes.
So it's all available on the internet now. And everybody can be an expert.
Yep.
So it's really important that, in our marketplace, that the seller is engaging with somebody who has the skill set to be able to defend, but also have the buyer relate to them. Because if the buyer relates to them and they feel comfortable with the realtor,
exactly.
we say agent, you say
Same.
realtor, agent. If they gravitate towards them, they tend to be more giving in a negotiation.
Exactly.
Nobody likes aggression.
Yep. 100%.
We all retreat if that's the case.
Yep.
So, I find that sort of, really creates a better outcome.
Well, I think in any deal and us being ambassadors is you want to take away your ego, right? No ego in this game. Yeah. And then you get more bees with honey, right? So goodwill. So the first thing you do when a buyer comes in for a showing is make them feel comfortable. All right, the details will fall into place. How do I get them to drop their guard? This is a new world for them. This is a foreign house that they've never been into. This is maybe a new process. It might be a stressful process. How do I get them to relax, be themselves, relate on some sort of level? And by doing that, you're helping your seller obtain top dollar. Now, like you said, there's information's available at everybody's fingertips. So back in the day, it might have been this kind of slick sales pitch. I find it more... you actually have to work to obtain that price now. So it's not so much my whole spiel during the show, and that's part of it, but it's also making sure, again, to retract any of those objections that are going to happen during the showing. So you can't rest on your laurels of, this was my last deal. I said things so slick that they overpaid. No, it's doing the stuff on the front end so that you can get the return on the back end.
Absolutely. So that comes down to all sorts of staging. It's the gardening.
Yes.
It's having a look at the lighting.
Yes.
And it's, I'm interested. We have, we'll have a plumber come in beforehand, and they might replace, all the toilets, for example, in the bathrooms. They might also change the tapware. Yeah. We might put in new shower heads.
All of those goes a long way. And I think with the way the internet is now and online shopping and all these new kind of resources, our agency has changed a little bit. But now as a seller, things are easier than ever because we're not asking you to break the bank. I don't want you to spend $50,000 to make an extra $40,000 on the purchase price.
Exactly.
I want you to spend $5,000 to make an extra $50,000. It's doable.
Yeah.
It's fresh paint. It's LED light bulbs. Mm-hmm. It's you don't need a $5,000 piece of art. You need a $100 piece of art that looks like a $5,000 piece of art, and it's smart design, and it's having that eye for what's trending. The open concept, the whites, the natural tones, the wood, the stones. We're almost asking you to hack the system, right? So every listing presentation I have, if they're open to it, some people just want to list and be done with it and price it lower so that it overcomes any objection.
Yep.
But if you're open to it, you really want to obtain higher than fair market value, or at least fair market value. It's going room by room and then saying, all right, I can get this online. For Maui, we don't have a lot of furniture stores. We don't have a lot of access to things that are trendy. So it's leading them to Amazon Prime and, buying a new couch for $1,000 that they could spend $5,000 down the street, and helping them kind of get as much return on investment as possible. And so at the end of the day, you're paying me part of the sales price, but I'm actually saving you money. My service should be free at the end of the day. If you adhere to the advice and we do this as a team, my service I should make you X amount of dollars more than if you try to do it yourself. Thus, my service being,
yeah,
free
exactly.
of charge.
We've always had a golden rule. If we ask you to spend $1, we want to make you $2.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we only do it with the best of intentions, and it's based on our experience.
Yep.
And quite often it's also about having a look at a room, because, I'm interested. We mainly do open for inspections.
Yeah.
And so you might have 10 groups walking through a property all at the one time.
Okay.
In which case you need to think about how people can flow through spaces, and you don't want them walking through 5 couches and an armchair and a coffee table and, a sideboard and,
yep.
Then just so they can get to the outdoor area. Yep. You want to be able to have that flow so they can walk through open spaces. And that's one of the things that we look at creating too. For example, if there aren't French doors, or if there aren't sliding doors, or what can we do to maximize that space in a cost-effective way to make the room look bigger?
Yeah.
And there's ways of doing that before you go to market as well. So
100%.
Yeah, it's those little things.
Little things go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's kind of something that I haven't really heard a lot of people say too much, and I'm kind of learning it myself as I just purchased a new home and a new development. I'm learning that, like sellers, we don't want you to live in a house for 10 years and neglect all these rules, because it will be an overwhelming task, especially if you get a job relocation and you got to be out in a month. It's going to be hard to change countertops with contractors, all that stuff. You have life going on. You have kids. You're showing while you're living in it. So it's not that easy. So if you can try to be a little bit more preventative, and again, it's to each his own. It's up to you. But us being in the business, we have an eye for this. So you can tell when your neighbor's spending $10,000 on the landscaping when it's going to have a negative impact on his property, because he's not doing it to set up curb appeal. Or somebody who paints their house hot pink, that's probably not the thing right now. Maybe one day. They're doing it for lifestyle, which you should do. You don't want to live in a museum, but every time I do something to my house, I'm thinking about the next buyer. Every time I order furniture, I'm not saying, oh, I like that one because it's top of the line. I'm saying that's a $500 dinner table that looks like a $2,000. I'm gonna be able to reap this at some way when I go to sell. Now that's us being agents. I don't expect everybody to do that, but try not to shoot yourself in the foot with certain remodels, with certain floor plans, with as much as maybe bring in an interior designer.
Yeah, I think it's all about getting the professional advice. But we have a team of tradespeople that we work with. Yeah. We have a team of gardeners. We have a team of painters. We have people that come in and do new window furnishings, new carpet, and new paint.
Awesome.
And in fact, that's what my wife and I are doing whilst we're here. Yeah. We've handed over the keys to our team, and we're having new carpet and new paint put in. Yeah. And that's all with the view to when we put our property on the market, it's ready to go.
Exactly.
And it takes away the inconvenience. So I think if people are thinking ahead and future-proofing.
A little bit more proactive.
Yeah, be proactive,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Average people live in their homes about 7 years. Yeah. And say you have somebody who's been living in a home for 15 years, that floor plan's probably already dated by then, especially with how technology and development's changing, and how well people can come out with really modern type of floor plans. They're crushing the homes that were built into, at least for out here in my market.
Yeah, so there's a big thing in our market. If everybody wants an ensuite.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a walk-in robe.
Okay.
There's an emphasis on storage.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that everybody wants an open plan living.
Yeah.
So if you do have an older home, that has a lot of separate rooms, sometimes it's hard for those sellers to understand, because they look at the house across the road they don't think of it as open plan. They say, that block size is the same.
Yeah.
The front of the house looks similar.
Yeah.
We're built in a similar era.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's often floor plan.
For better or for worse. So you want to be on the right side of that. You want to take advantage. So the big key is really with real estate, you don't make money when you sell. You make money when you buy. So how do you stay ahead of that trend, knowing that this open floor plan concept, that might be dated 10 years from now? For me, my thought process is for my Maui living and for the way development is so slow out here, I know I need to sell my house before 10 years because it's going to lose its shine. And then the neighborhood's going to trend upwards, and then it's going to turn. It's going to start hitting a depreciation mode. Mm-hmm. So I'm figuring out, how do I make the most money when I sell before I even bought this property? I already had a game plan in place. So as a seller, all right, I see that I have this kind of closed floor plan. The trend is open concept. I got to kind of readjust this as best as I can. We don't all have a crystal ball, but you do have to readjust. And if your top priority is money or return, how do you be ahead of the puck as much as possible as a seller?
Yeah.
Because sometimes too little is too late.
And that sort of brings me to another point, is your average days on market are somewhere between 60 days and 2 years.
Yeah, depending on neighborhood and price point.
Okay. My average days on market ranges between 28 and 32 days.
Yeah,
so
rub it in, Sam.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No.
So, Robert, one of the things that I'm interested in is, and obviously luxury property takes longer, and it does in our marketplace too.
Yeah.
We can find that a luxury property does take 100 days or up to 200 days. And sometimes that can be because you're trying to find a buyer that's in a niche because there's a smaller pool of people with that budget.
Yeah.
And that that who can afford that property. And then there's the other times where it's because it's an individual property.
Yeah.
It's not going to speak to as many people.
Exactly.
It may not be, for example, it might be a $10 million property that's not friendly for young children.
Yeah.
For young families.
It's very niche because it went lifestyle for a specific family, and thus limiting your pool of buyers.
Yeah. And so, with a property that's, that takes longer, and obviously we both agree, whether it's Maui or Melbourne, it's price, presentation, or marketing.
Correct.
And I would go as far as to say the agent.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So, those things come into consideration. Yeah. When you have a property that does take longer, I mean, what is the advice to the seller? At what point do you adjust price? Is it based on what's been selling around you and you're constantly analysing that? Or is it based on days on market? Is it the feedback from the buyers that are walking through? Like, what dictates a price adjustment?
And I always hate this answer, and I'll have more concision to it, but it all depends, right? So as agents, I think what we often do is we go into we call them listing presentations. Or
so do we, yeah.
And we talk too much. And we think we have an idea of what these sellers represent and what the property represents and what we should price it at and what the market is saying. The first thing I always try to be cognitive of is, let me ask as many questions as possible. Really understand these people, really understand their goals, really understand their motivations.
Yes.
Are they committed to selling, or are they interested in selling? At the very high end, and especially a second home resort market, sellers don't have to sell and buyers don't have to buy. Sellers are never like, oh no, the bank's knocking on the door. Rarely. I mean, we had that moment, 2009, 2010, with the housing bubble. But as of now, status quo, I haven't had too many sellers say, hey, I got to unload this property.
So they're not under pressure.
No pressure. It's a second home. It's rarely occupied. They might use it 3 months out of the year, and they have a number in mind. Buyers, I'll buy it if it makes sense. It's got it's an intrinsic thing. It's somewhat investment, but it's also, I want to take my family out here, feel good, and I want it to be at a good price. So you got this big gap in the middle, and that's where the 2 years comes from. It could be the right price, Obviously, when you have an overpriced listing. And if you got, again, this is your mortgage you're paying, or this is your money, I don't want to overstep my boundaries too much, but here's the facts, here's the reality, what do you want to do, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And everything in between there, because depending on their personality, how we mesh, I don't mind riding with somebody for 3-4 years, if they want to take a chance with market corrections. But all things considered, say you have a committed seller, and you got to prep them when they buy. Hey, just so you know, this is an illiquid asset. It might take a couple years to move, so let's be patient. So if I come into you as a seller and say, hey, 6 months, you'll be gone, and the market's telling me, per the data, it's 2 years, and we don't get lucky, then I look like the a-hole, right? So it's mostly preparation, setting expectations, showing them in writing. This isn't just me waving a wand or making things up to my own benefit. This is the truth. These numbers don't lie. I'm not manipulating in any sense. And all right, you want to be gone before 2 years? Well, here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to invest into the shine of the property or overcome it through price structure. Now, also with that, pricing becomes really important because now you're fighting staleness with days on market. So 2 years.
Yeah, we say time kills deals.
Yeah. So how do you advise the buyer that, hey, 2 years is normal? It's not that this isn't an attractive place to buy. It's just the setup. These are sometimes vacation rentals, but I can't even show them.
That is an objection you need to be prepared to handle. Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. And how do we do this dance? Sometimes we reset days on market, but again, with the internet being so transparent,
there's a digital footprint, isn't there?
Always, right? You can't get rid of it. So pricing is key. And again, I tell my sellers, this is a dance, and you don't want to step on their toes, and you don't want them stepping on your toes with a low ball offer. A low ball offer is not going to get them the best deal at the end of the day. It's something enough to get people, swinging the hips a little bit, having fun. So depending on their motivation, again, price has got to be the number one thing. I can do all the clever, beautiful marketing in the world. We can put as much lipstick on this property as we could ever dream of. But if the price is wrong, it's 90% of the time, it's going to be a long time coming. And then you do your price reductions, and it's almost like too little, too late. You've come out too high in the market. Now you're selling. You won an extra $100,000, and now you're selling at a negative $100,000 wing. There's risk versus reward in your pricing strategy.
I think as a pricing curve, if you start here, you've got more chance of coming down further. We all. I think that's the same in all market, isn't it?
Yep.
In all markets, there is. If you overprice, you miss out on the potential of the best buyers, and you also miss out on the potential of the competition.
Yeah.
And we often find that pricing can be so sensitive. We adjust it slightly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you look attractive. You have competition, and it goes back up.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen. We do a lot of auctions in our marketplace, which is different again.
Yeah.
So we stand in front of the property and, we talk about the...
That's all. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
So I'm an auctioneer.
There's action and there's a pulse and there's sense of urgency.
Yes.
Take all that away. There's no sense of urgency, and you cannot push people into the stuff. You cannot... you package and you sell and you shine and all those fun aspects of the job, but they're never going to be worried that I might lose this house. Again, I'm talking luxury.
Yeah, I know, exactly. There's a lot to be said for that fear of loss.
Yes.
And so how do you create that fear of loss? And when you have a property that's overpriced, or it's
especially not there. Yeah.
It's especially not there. So I think that's a good way of looking at it. My favorite question to our sellers is, what's important to you?
Great question.
That's basically where I start my presentation.
Yep.
Because it gives it sort of gives you the clues, doesn't it? And it's the same answers that you're looking for. It's how long do you want to be on market?
Yeah.
Where are you going to next?
Exactly.
What's your goal? What are we trying to help you achieve? Ultimately, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
and we're here to do it in the best possible way in the shortest amount of time to get you the best possible price.
And there's so many other variables there, right? Because we tend, as just human beings, we kind of get a little bit narrow on our approach, especially when it comes to money. There's some principles with the psychology of money. It's called loss aversion. So if you're selling we call it upside down house, where you purchase it for more than you're trying to sell it for, you start almost making irrational decisions because you feel like I gotta, as opposed to if you had equity and you make a more rational, you're more likely to make more money. So you almost have to walk them through as, all right, you're selling this property, but you're going to buy another property in this other market. Our market, and I'm not saying for Maui, but potentially say this marketplace is depreciating 3%, and the market you're going to buy into is appreciating by 6%, but you're going to hold out for 2 years to get the number that you want here, and it's going to keep dropping, and you're missing the bigger picture. So you're not a financial advisor, but you're trying to get their mind turned on to, you're already on this train of real estate. The market's moving. How can you extrapolate the most as you can? It's about
how it's framed, because we find this with certain stock. So our market has been gangbusters. What it's done in the last 12 to 24 months has been astronomical. I mean, for example, I sold a property in 2015 for $2,285,000. In 2 years later, roughly 18 months later, sold the same property for $3,050,000.
Wow!
And all they did, the people who bought it, was put the bed covers on,
and a new doormat,
and a new doormat. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah.
So that's an astronomical jump.
Yes.
And there's so many stories like that. But the hardest thing is we sell. In our marketplace, we sell everything from one-bedroom apartments that are worth $300,000 or $400,000 through to properties that, might be worth over $5 million.
Yeah.
Recently sold a house for just over $7 million. So it's quite divergent.
Yeah.
It's a big scope, but it's hard to tell the one-bedroom owner, well, your property hasn't actually shifted in price. In some cases, it's gone backwards.
There's microeconomics involved, and it's not just macro. Not everybody gets to ride that same trend line.
Yeah. Exactly. And so in our marketplace, the more land you have, the more growth you have.
Yep.
That's certainly been the trend. And apartments that attract owner-occupiers because they're really big.
Yeah.
Then maybe we are a bit like Manhattan, where we do get these amazing prices. We talk in per square meter.
Yeah.
We do get these amazing prices, but it's not the case across every market. So you have to be able to educate the seller to say, well, look, these are the reasons. These are the properties in your market segment. These are the ones. This is the history of how long they took to sell, and here's the evidence on growth.
Yeah.
And here's the important key is, okay, for 5 years you've had no growth. If you can move your money and shift it into this property, the evidence is over the last 5 years you would have grown by 20%. It makes sense to not keep your money in that property and to not keep waiting, because ultimately it's an opportunity cost.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and so I think that's an important thing for sellers to perhaps just it's a bitter pill.
Yeah.
But sometimes
big picture.
A big picture.
Yeah, and that's where if you have the right real estate agent, they'll do so much for you. I mean, we all want the best for our clients, obviously.
And the best agents are in it for the long game, aren't they?
Exactly. Yes. There's a good business is good business, right? And the right thing is the right thing to do. So. The market. We know the market like the back of our hands. We know every little market segment, the pulse of it, what's going on, how to prepare our clients for, this is what I would do if it was my money. And again, we don't have that crystal ball, but we're practitioners. We have way more experience in it, selling homes day in, day out than the average person buying, 7 homes in their lifetime. So it's great advice, and it's great to try to get outside your box of the immediate, and it depends on your age demographic, where you plan on, is your salary going to increase in the future, and knowing that, again, it goes back to
risk and reward.
Yeah, you make money when you buy real estate, not when you go to sell real estate. So again, for Maui, it's like new development and shiny. You can make a good amount of money on the first 5 years, but real estate is really location, location, location.
Yeah.
So if I have a buyer who I know they're going to be into it for 10, 15, 20 years, it's like, yeah, all right, you might want that brand new house on the smaller lot, but why don't we look into the 2-acre setup where you can put in sweat equity into the home, but when you go to sell it 20 years from now, your land is such a diamond, is such a piece of art that the appreciation level went 10% as opposed to 3% with a new development home that would feel nice the first couple of years, but will inevitably lose its shine. So, I mean, that's kind of buyer advice, but it's you can't ignore these aspects if you're going to be a purchaser of real estate in your lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good advice. Now, the best thing I'm loving about our chat today is that I had a whole series of notes on my iPad.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked at it once.
It goes away. Yeah, exactly.
So I really appreciate that. I'm having some good fun. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, I think the best agents know their points of difference.
Yeah.
And are able to express those to the vendor, or the seller. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, what do you see as your points of difference?
Yeah, a couple of things. And there's also one big piece I wanted to get into, and I don't know if it's the same in Australia.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I just had a listing presentation in Wailea, which is kind of the...
That's where I'm staying.
Yeah. I mean, in the state of Hawaii, I'd say Wailea is probably your most desirable area. Wailea McKenna. It would be relevant to like the Beverly Hills of Hawaii.
Yeah. And it has from what I understand, it has one of the best weather patterns as well.
Extremely protected
from
elements. You got protection from outer islands, and then our huge Haleakala Mountain. The weather patterns is just, you got to suffer through 78 to 82 and about 10 inches of rain a year.
So I think that's about 28, 30 degrees in our terms.
Thank you. And not protected from the trade winds, which can be an objection on certain parts of the island. They have world-class golf courses, restaurants, resorts.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Follow the money.
It's very lush, yeah.
One of the rules to real estate investment is buy where the wealthy play, and it's definitely that kind of town. So I had this listing presentation, and I think naturally sellers kind of go into, are we going to market to, for us, lately weird, are you going to market to Asia? And I'm going, here's the stats, about 0.5% of Chinese, Japanese are buying in Maui, so not a lot of sense spending astronomical dollars into a newspaper in China. Why don't we focus on to where our buyers are coming from?
Yeah.
And then we get into other layers, and I always tell this to my sellers, and they go, I've never heard that before. And I think it's kind of funny is that I'm not so much always trying to find the buyer. I'm trying to find the realtor who has the buyer. So for us, it's the gatekeepers, and especially on a small island. So it becomes goodwill. So I want to operate in goodwill. So marketing and goodwill, I think, are my two strengths. Marketing in the sense of that I do all my own graphic design. I know how to package a property. I know how to do the videography with the team. Obviously we hire professionals, but you have to have an eye and storyboard and package this property and give it a personality.
Storyboarding is really important.
Yes.
And it's all about planning for success, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And knowing what kind of buyer that property is going to attract, and doubling down on that if need be, or keeping it neutral if need be, depending on the price point and all those other factors. But you can't be lazy about it. There's so much, you have to have so much attention to detail nowadays if you want to stand out from the competition, and that's going to be priceless from an agent. So while marketing might not get you an extra 10% of your purchase price, again, you're going to be the girl at the dance who gets picked to dance because again, I'm in a second home market, so people love video. They have to be able to feel like they're in the home without being here. They might be working in Canada or California, and then they go online and they watch the video. I have to be able to do a full-on virtual showing to them. So videography is big nowadays.
And are you using drones as well?
Drones are huge, yes, a must. Because we're not just selling the property, we're selling a lifestyle. So proximity to the beach, golf courses, restaurants, snorkeling, whale watching, all those things are part of the price tag that you're paying for. If you look at it pound for pound, you could say, all right, well, I could buy 1,000 square feet in Arizona for $500,000. Why would I spend $3 million in Maui? Well, here's why. Let me tell you why.
Yeah. Someone had the drone out when I was having a swim this morning.
Yeah.
They might reshoot that one.
Okay.
I I'm not sure that's going to be a selling point.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. You might be a viral star before you know it. Yeah.
But I think, as you say, it's the way it's packaged. I mean, we love dusk photography.
Yeah.
It's
getting good 2 sets.
Yeah.
Dusk
Dusk and
and,
day.
Yep.
Especially if there is a view, and you can get a beautiful sunset, or, it just leaps off the page in terms of photography, doesn't it?
Exactly.
But we're finding most of our marketing is moving digital. So, is the print media here still as relevant? And are you dealing with? Because I think that we like to do a combination, but where we're finding print media is still relevant is finding what we would term as the passive buyer.
Yeah.
Or we have a destination property. Okay, it's something that has some unique characteristic, like an incredible view.
Yeah.
Or an incredible position, something that people might wait.
Trophy property.
A trophy property, yeah. The one they've always walked past and they've always wanted.
Yeah.
So we find that that's where your passive buyer might come into it, because your active buyers are all on the iPad or the iPhone. They're all digital.
Yep.
So where are your buyers coming from, and where do you see the marketing trends? I mean, what's your recommendation?
So here's the true process for where I live, right, for Maui. So again, our buyers are primarily going to be West Coast, mainland America, so California, Washington, Oregon, a lot of Canadians, Vancouver. But this isn't their backyard, especially if it's a second home purchase. So they get off the plane. There's no baseline for why should I pay $2 million in Wailea versus $1 million in Kihei, why the variance. So they rely primarily, again, on the realtors. So I like if I'm doing print, maybe it's unbranded flyers and then physically passing it out to the realtor community, or going to the caravans and doing the open houses. But certain properties do deserve the magazine full page spread because it's unique, trophy. It creates a brand for the property. I'm a heavy believer in branding, and you should be able to brand properties individually. But we create a lot of property websites where you can find all the photography there, location, amenities, and then the videography as well. But again, making sure that the realtor understands that this is a good deal, so that then they can bring the buyer.
And I think that's the difference that we have, because we don't deal very often with a buyer's agent. Okay, so that's fundamentally different in our market space. The buyer comes directly to us.
Okay.
And we're the ones representing the seller. We help the buyer through the process, and very rarely is there a go-between. But it's an emerging system in Melbourne.
So how do negotiations on price follow? I mean, we have something called dual agency out here, where you're representing almost both parties, and you got to step away and your hands are tied. Are you able to go to buyer and say, why don't we offer this, or I suggest this?
Okay, so we have a fiduciary responsibility to getting the seller the best possible price. So we've got that responsibility of being charged, with having to make sure that we've done everything we possibly can, left no stone unturned to get the best price. So that with our relationship with the buyer, we have to, in some cases, actually reaffirm that with the buyer, because the buyer might say to us, and this is a common one, the buyer will come up and say, Sam, I've got a property to sell. So,
help me out here.
Help me out here.
Yeah.
And the important thing to remember here is that sometime in the future, let's flip it over. Yes, that's correct. The buyer has a property to sell.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to represent them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they also need to know that when it comes time to me representing them,
if you're going to do it to them,
that I have to be able to defend them.
Yeah.
So I always have to come back to them and put them in the shoes of the seller and say, look, at some point, you're going to be standing in their shoes.
Yeah. And my reputation isn't worth one deal.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is what you want. You want somebody of character.
One reputation.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
One reputation. You and I are career agents.
Yep.
We have a client for life philosophy.
Exactly. Yep.
So from that perspective, you have to be able to give encouragement to buyers to make offers because everything needs a starting point.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about developing, but I think it comes down to a lot of the mystery has come out of real estate because, as we said before, information is there. You can go and have a look and watch the auctions, or you can look online to see what things are worth. So then it comes down to, being able to educate the buyer, but also to be able to coerce them or encourage them to say, well, how about you give me that as a starting point, or put your best foot forward in this situation. And ultimately you have to try and extract the best possible price. I mean, look, I always say to my vendor, this is how I operate.
Yeah.
I don't like to start at the lowest offer and then get you to the highest offer. I like to actually take the buyer to their highest point and then bring you the offer.
Yeah.
So I prefer to not come with two or three.
Straight.
Yeah. And that's a very straightforward way of doing business.
Yeah.
Now, we all understand that, from a psychological point of view, that there's often negotiation.
Yeah.
And, okay, we all understand that. And ultimately, sometimes that's on the length of, you call it escrow, perhaps it's the length of settlement time, or that's what we refer to as the closing period is a settlement period.
Yeah.
So maybe that's 60 days, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it suits the seller and maybe it suits the buyer and maybe we meet in the middle.
Exactly.
But we always represent the vendor, and at some point we have to potentially go back to the buyer and say, look, I'm trying to help you here, but you're going to need to give me more.
Help me help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, exactly.
Help me help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, look, that works. We are finding that buyers agents are becoming more prevalent, but they're paid by the buyer. They're not.
Yeah.
They don't share a commission with us.
Which we can kind of do out here. It's called a buyer's representative agreement.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah.
I rarely do this. I usually do this if I, just that's the vibe I'm getting is this person doesn't really understand loyalty within real estate, because it is basically we're dealing in loyalty. And I just assume that you're going to notice that I'm the best man for the job. I care about what I do, and I'm going to be truthful with you. And so you're going to ride with me on this. And if you don't like my style and you don't like what I'm selling, then you don't have to ride with me. You can find somebody else. But then you stick with that one buyer's agent. If you feel like they don't understand that representation, then maybe you can have that conversation with, hey, we're going to do a buyer's rep agreement. You have to work with me. If you're going to fire me, fire me. We'll tear this up.
Yep.
But these are the parameters. And if a seller's offering X percent, you're going to come up with the difference in cash because you're hiring me at X percent. Now, if the seller pays that, then you're good, but I'm going to be compensated. It's not a bad way of doing business because, again, you want your agent to be motivated and well compensated. They're going to get you the best deal and they're going to go above and beyond for you. We're not money driven, but loyalty goes. My best deals are going to go to my loyal clients for sure, right? So there is that, but with dual agency, having that buyer that comes in unrepresented probably happens about 5% of the time. So they have this agent that represents the buyer and says, listen, these are my top 10 best buys. I know the market.
Yeah.
Let's go on showings, and then you're going to whittle down what suits your best, your criteria, and then I'm going to bring in the offer. We're going to negotiate. So now you have 4 people in the deal, which can kind of make for a messy dance sometimes, but again, it does keep people in their corners. But now you have 4 egos. You have the seller's ego, the seller's rep's ego, buyer's rep's ego, and then the buyer's ego. And that's, again, where I say for us as agents, goodwill. Because if I burn bridges with other agents out there, they're not going to show my properties. We're going to have less of a cohesive dance when we do come across each other. So I have to have a good reputation with every single agent as much as possible on island.
It's the key, isn't it? It's building rapport.
Exactly. We're working against each other, but we're working with each other.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that in our marketplace is so crucial, and I think so many agents get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because they tend to forget. I mean, we have to look after our buyers, and they tend to forget that.
Yeah.
So because all they're interested in is just getting the next listing. I want the listing. I want the listing. I want the listing. I said to our team the other week, I just sold a property to a lady, Claire.
Okay.
Claire has bought, I met her 7 years ago when I sold her a house, I've now done 7 transactions with that one person.
Yep.
And I'm about to also sell her friend's property.
Yep.
It creates all of this business just by having done the right thing, given them a good experience, and help them. And so it's spending a little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
You might go out of your way, but the reward is far greater, and then in turn is better for the seller. I mean that's ultimately what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
no, it's a small world, and it doesn't take much. And you want a high customer satisfaction rate, and it's going to generate more business. Referral business is the best type of business to have.
Exactly.
So an agent that might be coming in the game and think, I'll take shortcuts and rise to the top. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to do the right thing, and you got to do right by your client, and you got to do right by the other agents out there, because if you start stealing listings from other people or bad-mouthing an agent just to get another listing, that's going to affect your business. And especially if it's not true. Now, we have a code of ethics where I'm not allowed to talk negative about another realtor.
Yes.
So if they tell me who they're interviewing during a listing presentation, I'm going to say good things about them. And I'm not going to say, you know what, that guy, Steve, he's the bad person.
I've always found, my clients, I've actually won more business from people who do that, because the first thing that the client says is, he badmouth you.
Yep.
Obviously,
it looks bad on you.
Obviously, they're threatened by you.
Yep.
And I always say, look, that's their only point of difference.
Yeah.
Their only point of difference is to try and talk me down.
Yeah. It just shows their character. If they're going to do that, what are they going to do behind the scenes? What are they going to
do to your price and everything? Yeah.
That's the type of now you know what you're dealing with. And so a quick takeaway that I think any seller anywhere in the world can take is interview 3 agents. I know it might be boring or time consuming or this or that. It's probably your biggest investment, one of your biggest investments you're ever going to have. It takes 30 minutes to interview one agent, unless you already have a strong relationship with them. Again, loyalty's big, ride with that person. But if you don't know an agent, interview 3 and get a good sense of what the market's saying, what they're going to offer you, and what they represent, and then fire away from there. But people they spend more time shopping for a mattress than hiring a real estate agent. And it's such a big deal, and you don't realize until you go to war.
See, that's interesting, because, last year I sold, last year I personally listed over 70 properties.
Yeah.
And, I dealt in over 100 transactions overall, because remembering that sometimes I sell properties, I refer a buyer to one of my colleagues' properties, and
exactly
that sells. So I'm part of that transaction as well.
Yep.
So in that 70, call it rounded up to 70, in that 70, there were only 2 that I met at actual home opens. So most of my business is repeater referral. Okay, it's over 90%, and that's people that I've dealt with over a period of time, or they've been referred to me, and sometimes they're referred by another agent.
Yeah.
So it is a mixture, but that's the best business. From that point of view, you find that only comes to you when you've had that consistency.
Yeah, it takes time.
And it takes time.
Yep.
So I guess, but what we're finding is that sometimes, for me, I'm in the fortunate position where I'm not having to compete with too many agents. And that comes from time, as you said. But, we're finding that some people you walk into, especially if it's a cold listing, they're actually inviting 6 to 7 agents in. I think that's too many.
That's too much. Yeah.
I mean,
that's a reflection on you as a seller, knowing that you probably already want too much for your property. You're probably going to overshoot.
You're waiting for somebody to tell you the magic number.
Exactly.
Aren't you?
And then here's the dangerous part, and a huge tip for any seller out there. And it's totally natural. We all do it. It's confirmation bias. So you interview 6, 7 agents. Eventually, one of them's going to tell you what you want to hear, and you're going to, I like Tom. He told, he said we can get $1 million. Everybody else said we get $850. Yeah. Tom was so nice, and then again,
and he believes in my property.
Exactly. And he's confirming how I already felt. You're going off of your feelings instead of the facts, and it's so dangerous. And
it is dangerous, because the buyers, quite more often than not, they're a couple.
Yeah.
And what do? There's probably in every relationship, there's a voice of reason.
Yeah. One or the other, exactly.
Yeah,
50-50.
one or the other. And that voice of reason is going to be the person on the shoulder saying, hey, no, but that one down the road only sold for that, and those other three sold for that, and I think that's overpriced. So they're going to look at it from a more analytical sense.
The market is the market. Nobody, especially since the real estate bubble, wants to overpay for real estate holdings. They just don't. And if you have a flat market, you feel like you're assuming some risk. You can't afford to make a mistake. Nobody wants to get burned or watch $300,000, $400,000 just disappear overnight. And so for the mainland, I don't know what happened in Australia, but it left a really bitter taste in everybody's mouth. And real estate hasn't really operated the exact same way since. It's how much can I take it to the seller, not how can I brag about how much I spent.
Yeah, it's interesting in our market because we're in a booming market with an undersupply. Yeah. And when there's undersupply, and also there's we don't have many. It depends on where you are. When you get to the outer suburbs of Melbourne, you have estates where the properties, say, all look quite similar and they're similar land sizes. Yeah. But I work in the Bayside area, and where I work, it's very hard. If you're dealing in the house market, it's very, very hard to find two houses that are identical.
Exactly. So comps kind of go out for me. I don't really have too many comps to work off, comparables.
Yeah. Well, that's right. We have limited comparables too, and we have an undersupplied market, so we do have emotion. Yeah. But the emotion can be driven by competition, and I always feel that it's, people look for validation on their price when they're speaking to an agent. If they're getting 5 or 6, as you said, Robert, when they're getting 5 or 6 people in, they want to hear something. Yeah. And they're looking for this confirmation. And that's dangerous because ultimately the buyers shop will do that with their feet, right? Yeah. So they vote with their feet. Okay. If we're not getting the engagement, the inquiry, people aren't coming through to look at the property, then something's wrong. Yep. And it's the social proof. And for us, everybody wants to be at the busy listings. Everybody wants to be at the one that everyone else wants. Yep. Exactly. And creating that hype is about having it priced right. And it goes back to these fundamentals we talked about before.
Yeah, part of the other psychology is people want what they can't have.
That's right. Yeah.
I saw that growing up. I grew up. Oddly enough, I kind of grew up in casinos. I grew up watching like George Maloof, who ran the Palms Casino and started reality TV, or was part of, not he didn't start it, but showcased the Palms to do the reality TV show and segue us into what we're seeing today. And the Fertittas, working alongside them a little bit, who owned the UFC and sold. We're talking about billionaires. Yeah. They understood the psychology of money, and they knew how to make things exclusive. And the more these high net worth individuals feel like I can't have this, the more they want it. And we all kind of that way in a sense. So now you overprice and now it gets stale. And man, if those other 50 buyers didn't want it, I'm kind of nervous to buy it now. This doesn't make much sense for me. And if I buy it, am I going to take a loss? What am I missing? And it's not necessarily that you're missing anything. It's just what overpricing does to the psychology of a buyer.
Yeah, people don't want to feel like they're an island. Yeah. That's ultimately, or they don't want to feel like they're the pioneer. Yeah. That's the other one. So it comes down to, I think the takeaway here is that it comes back to those fundamentals: price, presentation, marketing, and the agent, and getting those keys right. And if you can blend those together with the right agent, you're going to get a better outcome. That's ultimately the.
And let me say, I'm fully empathetic to when you're a seller, like how emotional it is to sell a home that you've created memories in for 10 years.
It's a roller coaster.
And you've spent time, every Sunday you're out there mowing your grass, you're fixing everything, you spent money here, you spent money there, it all adds up. And I get it. Like, I want to get you $2 million for your $1 million. If I could, I would. Like, I want that for you. I understand that kind of kick to the gut a little bit. So we're not.
But it's not only that, is it? It's the buyers come through and say, "But your bedrooms are small." And that's hard.
There's always two sides to the coin.
That's hard. That's hard to take, isn't it? And
you
think, well, what's wrong with my kitchen?
This is not. You're not selling their product. You're not selling something that they built for market distribution. That's not their piece of furniture. That it's not standard marketing. Yeah. You're selling a little bit, a piece of them, what they represent, and it becomes very personal. I don't know if we have this saying for like mainland realtors where they say, first child, second wife, third realtor. And I, obviously I don't agree with the second wife part, but it's saying it's best to, your first kid's the luckiest, the second wife, blah, blah. And then the third realtor's the luckiest because they've already gone through the overpricing stages. They fired their first two realtors, and then you get in, you get the right price, and it sells like that. Timing is everything. I don't know. Do you guys experience that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it happens. It happens.
Just luck of the draw. It's not,
and often you see that agent that walks in. It happens to us. We'll list a property where, it's had some collateral damage. It's been badly done from the start, people haven't thought about the marketing. They haven't thought about the objections and all of those things that we've talked about in the show today, and it falls flat on its feet. We come in. We've got fresh eyes. We give it a fresh energy, a fresh approach. It goes on as a new listing. Everything looks new again.
Yeah.
It's priced correctly. And then all of a sudden it's sold in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny?
And it does. So it's the same in our marketplace. Yeah.
What do you feel like with clientele, the type of characteristic traits you've had the best wins with?
From a seller or from a buyer? Or
let's say seller. Yeah.
So characteristic traits, best wins in relation to getting the business, or
obtaining the highest price, in the sense that, I'll go buyers right now. Like I found in 2011 to 2014, 15, like we were like Melbourne, just appreciating 10% year over year. And I was having a group of buyers that was analysis paralysis, couldn't get off the fence. Didn't abide by the 80-20 rule where you're going to get 80% of your one. There's 20% you're going to have to compromise on. Nothing's perfect at any price point. And they might have bought a couple years later, and that cost them a 20% appreciation. So it was because they were being so overly analytical that while they were trying to obtain as much money as possible, ended up having adverse effects at the end of the day, as opposed to other buyers who said, all right, I'm a little bit more gutsy, a little bit more caution to the wind, and they were on the right side of it. Now, obviously, there's two sides of that spectrum. You could be a little too loosey-goosey, and you could be a little too analysis paralysis. Is there any...
loosey-goosey.
Yeah. And what I find with like high net worth individuals is they're really on top of their stuff, and we're dealing with really brilliant people that are smart, but maybe at times in the real estate game, and again, we're practitioners, sometimes they think they know more than you do, kind of.
I reckon you've hit the nail on the head, Robert. Where's the most success come from? The most success has come from, because, you are dealing with a highly educated market, okay? But my greatest success has come from people that don't micromanage us. Because I think, especially when you're dealing with people that are in high net worth corporate environments, they're used to managing, and they might manage 200, 300, 400 staff. Then they can have that personality, we call it the red personality, where they want to be in control of everything. But I found the greatest success is when people let go a little bit and remember that we are the professionals. I don't come in and tell them, how to do an IPO. I mean, that's not my expertise.
Well, imagine going to the doctors and saying, that's not, I don't want to, your arm's broken. Nah, my arm's not broken.
I know.
I'm diagnosing it.
And so I think the people that respect that and come, I always say, look, real estate is a journey. I need you to come with me on this journey, and I'll get you to the best outcome. But in order to do that, you need to trust me. You need to remember that there's a reason why you picked me. There's a reason why you selected me. There's a reason why your friends recommended me. And there's a reason why I have all these testimonials that are available online. And they're written independently. They're on an independent website. And I always offer as well, I always say to clients, you can actually see my sold history. You can go on to samgamon.com. You can have a look at every property I've sold in the last 12 months. I'm happy for you to go on there and randomly pick anybody and then ring me and say, hey, Sam, is it all right if I speak to that person?
Exactly.
I need to get their permission from a privacy point of view, but I'm 100% confident that everything I do comes with consistency, dedication, and my heart's always in the right place.
Yep.
So I always say to the clients, if you want to have the best outcome, the people that you talk about it being a dance, if they dance with you, they're the ones that are going to get the best outcome. So not the ones that micromanage, not the ones that second guess you at every turn, and is that the right thing? And it's teamwork.
Yep. It's a partnership.
It's a partnership.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's a partnership. And so I always say, look, I always encourage the seller, are we going to make a great team? Do you feel comfortable? Because ultimately you need to feel comfortable that we're going to make the best team. And if we can work together, then don't select an agent based on who has the best marketing. We all have great marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's points of difference in marketing.
Yeah.
That's different.
It's just one aspect, though.
It's one aspect.
out of 10 aspects. Yeah.
Exactly.
The probably the highest aspect, which you touch base on, is trust. And trust is earned through experience and through professionalism and educating yourself and being the best at what you do. The real estate game's the funnest job ever. Like, I love what I do, but I want to dominate this game. So every time I go into a listing presentation, I already feel like I'm the best person for the job. And that's not, it's not an overconfidence thing. I've prepped for this. I've educated myself. I've worked my butt off. I'm the first one in the office, last one to leave. I deserve this opportunity. And another great golden gem that you said for sellers, and again, most won't do this, but they should, is verify some of these testimonials, call some past sellers. Yeah. So the last listing presentation I had,
It's not us tooting our own horn. I mean,
it's easy. Yeah, exactly. It's easy for me to be my own cheerleader. Here's an experience, and I'm not going to pick the best ones. You pick whoever you want. Call any seller that you want.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's not a setup. It's
one of the smartest things you could do as a seller, because they're going to tell how it is, those people with that experience.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that
it's the truth.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
It
takes 2 minutes. It's probably one of the most powerful things you did.
And you know what amazes me is how many people don't do
it.
Even when I offer it. I mean, they don't.
Yeah. They don't call your bluff, and they kind of say, "Oh, he's being genuine," so they assume they're good reviews.
Well, look, I'm willing to back myself, and ultimately,
100%. I want them to call. That's what hurts. I'm like, man, you're gonna.
I know, because you get the person, and you. I always find you've got that willing advocate on the other end, and they're texting me going, "I haven't heard."
Yeah, exactly.
and they're ready as well, and that's the great thing. But I think the important thing is that it can be random, because you want. It's natural.
You want a sample size. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be able to go to any of my past sales and call 3 and get a sense of how I operate.
Yeah, get the reality. Yep. Yeah, it's that's
way,
perfect.
Because it's understandable that sellers have a control issue with salespeople. Obviously, right? There's a lot of bad salespeople in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we all know a bad agent
it puts a bad taste in your mouth forever. So now you want to micromanage. I'm almost that way myself, so I get it. But for us to have the best success, just as you said, trust, communication, partnership has to be involved. And so do your due diligence on the front end, be as analytical as you want, grill me as much as you want, dig into whatever hole you want to dig into. But once it's the green light, let's do this the right way. Trust me.
Come with me. Yeah.
Turn me loose. It'll be great results.
Let me do what I need to do to get you the result. Cool. Okay, just I guess just to have a bit of fun. Yeah. Your highest sale?
5 1/4, 5 million and 5.25.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. What sort of property was that?
Phenomenal property. Yeah, I love this property. Okay. To me, it's probably the finest property on Maui. And obviously, I'm maybe not being objective, but I've shown $10, $20 million properties on Maui and stuff that I wouldn't buy. Just not impressed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, oceanfront, old, dated, the wrong this, the wrong that, the wrong feel. This one was just a gentleman's estate, the 5 acres, the hillside, 180-degree panoramic ocean view, classy, timeless. This was the type of architecture where I don't see going out of style. I see a great appreciation rate for this property. The right square footage, the right amount of privacy, the right amount of family warmth. It wasn't cold. And you couldn't if you wanted to replace it, you're probably about an $8 million build out. So I fell in love showing that property, visiting that property after the sale. Couldn't have gone to a better family. It was a journey. That client purchased quite a bit more real estate. They're the nicest people in the world. They have a ton of money, but nicest people ever. And that's what we care about. You don't have to spend $5 million with me, but I want to have respect in our deal, and I want to look up to you and have you look up to me as much as possible.
And create a relationship.
Because you can buy a $10 million property, and if you don't treat me like a human being, that's not what our job's about. We really genuinely want to help people. But anyway, I love that property. There's one that I sold, and this one's fun because it was a high-end property, and part of the listing presentation was this guy was super cool, and I went on with it with a business partner and a friend. He goes, "Bring your board shorts." And I'm like, all right, I'm used to the button-up shirt.
I'm loving this already.
Kind of island casual, but I trusted them. They were kind of friends. And so we do the whole song and dance, obviously getting the listing. And he's like, all right, enough of this mumbo jumbo. Maui's longest slip and slide was on his property. It's a 400-foot slip and slide. And so part of getting the listing was I have to kamikaze down this we're going like 30 miles per hour, and you just bomb down this hill and then splash into the ocean.
Brilliant.
But not the ocean, but the pond at the end. Yeah. That's what makes this job fun. Is
memorable, isn't it?
Yeah, every day is different.
Yeah. If you had, just I guess a few takeaways, like some top tips for sellers, what would you say?
Hire me. No, I was kidding. Yeah. No, top tips. Again,
hire me.
It goes. It might not be the sexiest thing you're gonna do in 2017 if you're a seller 2018, but due diligence is key, right? Do the work, interview 3, do the research, call past clients. It's so key because once it's too late, it's too late. When you're in the middle of the deal and contracts are signed, you can't fire anybody, and you're married to this person, and you want to have a healthy relationship. It's gonna be equivalent to your bottom dollar. You're gonna make more money. So that'd be your biggest thing. And 2, put in the sweat equity effort and do it prior to when you have to go on market. So if you know you're going to have a job relocation 6 months from now, start changing the light bulb, start, buying new towels, this and that, and getting the place done. Because when you come to me and you say, I want to get on market in 2 weeks and I'm ready to go, I got to be out in 2 months. And I'm going, well, you're saying you want $1 million. Yeah. I can only get you 9 right now. But if you do what we say we're going to do, I can get you $1 million. But it's a lot of work. We don't have that access to the resources of teams like you do there. Labor is very expensive out here, so it's a lot of sweat equity.
Yeah.
So being proactive.
That's probably a bit different because we can turn things around pretty quickly.
Yeah. So being as proactive as possible, and then just respect and taking care of yourself as much as possible and being in a good emotional state when you do sell, because it could be a stressful process for you. Maybe it's a divorce. Maybe it's you don't want to sell, you love Maui, or maybe it's a good thing for you, but there's probably going to be some stress factors there. So, this is maybe a little more unconventional, but making sure that you're staying healthy, you're working out, you're eating right. When you're going to go through something that's going to be a life-changing event. And if it's a second home for you and you got money and you're just getting off your portfolio, you do what you want. But if it's your personal home, waking up in that right frame mind to have the place staged when there's a showing that day. And when you get that offer on paper and when you're negotiating, you're able to be a little bit more rational and healthy. It's a little bit more of a holistic approach, but it's important. I don't think enough agents help on the lifestyle.
I think a lot of agents don't consider saying that to their clients.
Yeah.
So I think that's progressive.
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway.
It's an emotional process. And even for us as agents, I think it's important to wake up, go to the gym, or read a good book, or inform yourself, have a good morning, because we're bringing that energy into that deal.
Absolutely. And it's not just transactional, is it?
It's a lifestyle.
And I mean, we deal with, I guess everybody, it can be this emotional roller coaster. It doesn't need to be such a stressful environment. It can be quite stress-free if it's approached in the right way.
Yeah.
And preparing for that, as you say, being mentally fit, being well prepared, doing your homework. It's common sense. But
and like you said before, is set an expectation. So, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, we're probably going to hit a speed bump. somewhere in the line, something where it's going to come back on title, something where it's going to come back on property inspection. Somebody's loan's going to go
All of those things happen. I mean,
these happen, right? So let's stay calm, cool,
life is unpredictable.
Yes. And so setting them up for expectation helps kind of put out some fires before they happen.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the emotional state of the seller, because then we make emotional decisions on, I don't like that buyer because he's asking for 30 days this, or 2 weeks that, or he wants me to pay this.
I know, and we all try and read minds.
Yeah.
And
usually these are all good people.
And sometimes we overthink things as a seller.
Yeah.
You can overthink. You can think that you know the buyer, and you somehow form an opinion about them.
Well, what's really funny is a lot of times these buyers, they just hate each other, and then you get them together maybe for a final walkthrough, and they're like just yucking it up, and they would have been best friends if it wasn't for that. That guy wasn't so bad. Like, what, you wanted to kill him 2 weeks ago? Most of the time, people are good people.
And I think that's an important thing. It's probably a tip for the sellers that I've got is to keep an open mind with the feedback, because the feedback can be seemingly hurtful, but sometimes the feedback is crucial. I mean, I've had a couple of properties where people have said, the laundry doesn't have a window, or there's no access from the laundry to outside, or there might be, in one case we had somebody who was a famous musician, and we had a 3-bedroom house. He turned it into a 2-bedroom because he wanted a big room to record in.
Yeah.
And when we came to sell, everybody said, no, it's a 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
All it was $1,000 to put a stud wall in.
Yep. Those little things go so far.
And so I had recommended it. He didn't take on board the recommendation. Yeah. We tried, we tested, and all of the people coming through were saying, hey, this is a 2-bedroom house. Yeah. So we just flipped it, and we didn't have time to put the wall in. But what we did is we went out and we got a quote for putting the wall in.
Sometimes that does just enough, as much. Yeah.
And it was there, and it wasn't, because often people think it's, if it's $1,000, they'll think it's $10,000.
You always overestimate any cost.
Yeah.
The fear of unknown is a deal killer in the real estate too. That's why you got to fix the leaks.
Great
tip. It might be $100 fix, but you have to do it. Otherwise, it's a $20,000 fix in the buyer's eyes. So the proactive agent versus a passive agent. I've worked with way too many agents that are passive, and they just throw it up on the market and fingers crossed, and they don't, go through the checklist. Yeah,
that's not our job. Our job is to be proactive.
So we got to be proactive with, permitting issues, tax discrepancies. We have, septics out here and everything in between. So
knowing your product,
having a respect for your real estate professional. Yeah. I mean, we bleed for this, and it's a ruthless game.
Yeah.
And we love what we do.
Jump on board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.